Hello everyone, my name is Karishma. I come to you from Gurgaon, India. I'm sitting in my home office. I have brown hair and brown eyes. My pronouns are she and her. I'm delighted to be your host for today. A very warm welcome to our distinguished panelists and our esteemed viewers who have joined us from all around Asia. We are proud to present to you our very own, first of its kind, virtual Microsoft Asia Accessibility Summit. This summit is actually an ongoing dialogue, today being the inaugural episode, and we will have many more episodes like this coming your way over the next few months. We have a packed next few hours with a host of exciting conversations by Microsoft leaders and external leaders, and we are extremely happy to be sharing this space with you today. With that, let me invite my fantastic co-host, Kenny Singh. Hello, Kenny. How are you today?
Thank you, Karishma. It's great to be here today. Really looking forward to the conversation. My name is Kenny Singh. I am a brown Indian male with short black hair. I'm wearing a maroon jumper. I come to you from Melbourne, Australia today, my home office in Melbourne, Australia. I'm wearing a Bluetooth headset. I have my screen reader streaming into my ears through this Bluetooth headset, and I actually have a magnifier running on the screen in front of me right now. My pronouns are he and him.
Do you want to talk us through what lies in store for us through the session?
Our theme this year is to reimagine ease of living for people with a disability in a hybrid world. Before we kick off the summit, Karishma, I actually have a friend who wants to talk to you.
Hey Karishma, it is great to be here at the Asian Accessibility Summit today. This is going to be so much fun.
Okay, I think we get the point. That was my screen reader. It does have a mind of its own.
Wow, Kenny, your friend is super smart. I'm so delighted to be introduced.
To kick off our summit today, we have the one and only, the president of Microsoft Asia, Ahmed Mazari. Ahmed leads a diverse, vibrant region with over 20 countries and over 10,000 partners across Asia. Ahmed, over to you. Please take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever Asia Accessibility Summit. Thank you all for tuning in today. I'm Ahmed Mazari, the president of Microsoft Asia. The Asia Accessibility Summit is a platform for us to engage in meaningful dialogue with one another, come up with localized solutions for individuals, and set actionable goals to achieve digital inclusion in Asia. This builds on our accessibility commitment made earlier this year to create more access to assistive technology at work, home, school, and play. Each December, the world observes International Day of Persons with Disabilities. It's a day that aligns with Microsoft's values and our commitment to inclusion. You can see this commitment in how we nurture and empower talent with disabilities, in how we work to make our products as accessible as possible, and also in how we innovate and engage with our customers and partners. Inclusion is a human right and a key sustainable development goal. Simply put, it's one way we can make the world a better place. The world has over 1 billion people who are disabled, and 70% of them live here in Asia. Access to education, employment, social protection, and economic participation remain a challenge for many of them. Only 1 in 10 currently have access to assistive technology, and this has directly affected their ability to make a living. These challenges have only been magnified throughout the pandemic, especially for people with disabilities who may have struggled with the shift to remote work. And as we emerge from the pandemic, focusing on accessibility will become more important than ever. The Microsoft Apac Enabler Program is one example of how we are making progress as a company here in Asia. This important initiative has opened doors for disabled talent to enter the workforce. Since the program's launch, many people with disabilities have secured full-time roles, internships, mentorships, and training opportunities, with more than 110 currently being matched to roles with Microsoft partners. This is only the beginning. We must think about how we can empower ourselves, our customers, partners, and the rest of Asia to utilize technology to create opportunities for all to participate in every aspect of life. But how do we do this? How can we spur the development of inclusive technology in Asia? What can we do to enhance access to assistive technology to help more people enter the workforce? And how can we build inclusive workplaces for people with disabilities? It all starts with having accessibility woven into the fabric of what we design and build to provide inclusive experiences for all. We must come together to accelerate and elevate the way forward for persons with disability through policy advocacy. We must also support our customers and partners so they too can advocate for accessibility and inclusiveness alongside us. Technology and innovation have a critical role in bridging barriers to communication, interaction, and information for persons with disabilities today, and will continue to in the years to come. I look forward to engaging in these discussions with you during this event and the series and beyond. All of us have a part to play in creating a more inclusive Asia that each and every one of us can thrive in. Thank you.
Wow, that was truly insightful and inspiring, Ahmed. Thank you.
Moving on to our next star speaker of the day, Jenny Fleury, Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer. Jenny has been at the forefront of leading Microsoft's accessibility commitments for over a decade and has been crucial in how the company has evolved in its culture, platforms, and services to empower people and organizations around the world to achieve more and do so inclusively. Jenny is an inspiration for millions around the world, including myself. Without further ado, let me invite Jenny Fleury. Jenny, please take it away.
Hi there, folks. My name is Jenny Fleury. I am the Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft, and I am thrilled to be a small part of your event today and to welcome you across the whole span of the region. Whatever time zone you are joining from, thank you for being a part of this very first new event. I'm here to talk about disability accessibility. I've had the privilege and honor of being in Microsoft now for coming up 17 years and being in this role for 6. And in that time, I've learned a lot and continue to learn every day about what matters in how to build a more disability inclusive, a more accessible world. And let me just really hone in the real nugget here. This matters. It matters particularly to this region. There is something that we term the disability divide that is growing. Disability divide is the difference in social inclusion of people with disabilities. Up here in the States, which is where I am here in Seattle, that bar of inclusion, well, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is double that for people without. And yet we know that the talent is there. We know that the talent is rich, but we know the opportunities and the doors may be closed to it. So working together, building ideas, thoughts, partnerships, is really the goal of this session, of this whole event. And I hope you will join me in doing that. So let me walk you through a little bit of the learning that we've had over the time, just to give you some substance to why I'm so passionate about this. And really our role, which is key to help the innovation, to move up the bar in assistive technology and customized solutions that are really going to help for your region, your city, your location. And most important to all of it is the inclusion of people with disabilities all the way through the process, in the workforce, in education. Because if there's one nugget of gold that I have learned, it's that people with disabilities are the key to building an accessible and inclusive world. So let me just peel back a little bit. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because of a lot of what you've already heard from Anant and what you're hearing from me in terms of the demographic. It's big, but it also matters because of the importance of having disability at the core of your everything process. We have learned that if you include people with disabilities and you include their insights, their expertise, whether they are a person with a disability, a family or friend, then that insight can help you to build a product, a website, a marketing campaign, anything that is more inclusive. Disability is something that can impact anyone at any time. Disability is something that can impact on a permanent basis. It can be temporary. It can be situational. And if you let me just make that real for a second. I'm profoundly deaf. I don't hear you. I know my speech is lovely. I have a British accent, for those curious. I moved over here about 15 years ago to work here at the head office at Microsoft. But my profound deafness is permanent. My daughter came home yesterday. I have a 14-year-old daughter. She came home and she'd been to a hockey game and she couldn't hear. That's a temporary form of deafness. She was sat far too close to the speakers, and by this morning it was gone. There's also situational deafness that can hear when you're in a loud environment and you cannot hear the person next to you, which, by the way, is when I shine, because I can watch what they're doing. I can sign, I can lip read. Disability is everywhere. 70% of it you cannot see. But we know that it's one of the biggest growing demographics in the world. You look at the prevalence of autism, 1 in 80,000 in the 80s, and it is now close to 1 in 60 here in the US and growing everywhere around the world. Mental health is the biggest growing demographic globally right now, exacerbated by the pandemic. So this is a big demographic, and ironically, it's a demographic we need to pull into the workplace to deliver better stuff. We've seen that impact in some of our own products, and I'm sure you've seen it in yours, whether it's the physical environment or the digital environment. Remembering that accessibility can be getting a ramp into a building, or it can be having captioning embedded into Microsoft Teams. Either are great examples of accessibility. Some of I referenced the pandemic, some of the innovation curve that we've been riding since the pandemic came in was because the pandemic made accessibility more important than ever. Overnight, we were all switched to work from home, to work from virtual environments. Many of you may be sitting still in those work from home environments. I'm working from my downstairs office right now. What that meant was a forced dependency on the digital environment. We heard overnight features that you wanted, that you needed, or you wanted to learn about that you'd never used before. Teams captioning actually grew 30x in that first month of the pandemic. We were able to share some of the great features like Immersive Reader for folks with dyslexia, which is just simple reading tools that empower the 5% of the population with dyslexia to read more easily. We were pushing, and we continue to push, on the use of accessibility checker, which is, just think of it like spell check for your documents, anything document. Make sure that before you send it, it's accessible to everyone, including people who are blind and low vision. Because, by the way, we put a lot of pictures in our documents these days, and every single one of them needs an alternative text description behind it. These features and more have helped people around the world, but we know that there is a lot more to do. If we're really going to tackle that divide, if we're going to tackle that bar of equity, inequity that exists, that we've become tolerant to over the last several decades, if not centuries, the reality is that there is no ceiling for people with disabilities. There is the only ceiling that people put on themselves and the environment places upon us. And let me just really linger on that second one, because we are placing many aspects onto that ceiling. If you think about that in the physical world, if you go to the next time you go out to eat, just think about whether or not you could roll into that restaurant if you're a wheelchair user. If with the lighting you would be able to read the menu. If there's music around, would you be able to understand what was going on in that environment? Would you be able to hear your colleague if you were deaf? Think about the environment. These are the aspects that we control, and we control them in the physical and digital world. What we want to do going forward is ensure that we don't leave people behind. We're on a journey with that. We're on a journey with many of you and many partners around the world to help make sure that the digital environment does deliver on that bar of equity. And let me just hit on a couple of examples just to spur your thinking and hopefully get you noodling on what you could do, or what ideas you have for what we could deliver and what we could craft on. One, let's talk about people and let's talk about hiring. That's our bedrock. That's something that really matters to us. That's at the core of the strategy that we have for accessibility at Microsoft. We've actively been opening doors to talent with disabilities. And when I say active, it means that we're not just making sure that everything on that process is accessible. If you apply to Microsoft, you'll find the websites, the hiring process, everything you can get through, you can hire. We want to make sure those doors are open to you. But we also have very specific hiring programs to go after talent. There's two that I'll give you a sense on. One is our neurodiversity hiring program. This actually started for hiring folks with autism. And we found that folks with autism, like my 14-year-old, can be very incredibly smart, incredibly wise, but may not shine in a traditional interview format. So instead, what we do is we bring folks in for an academy. We spend a week with virtual Minecraft sessions. Yes, we get people to game to get a job at Microsoft, and it's been incredibly successful. We have well over 100 folks, and that number goes up every month, that have come in to 12 different divisions in the company. Another program is the Supported Employment Program. This program hires developmental disabilities into Microsoft. It is global and it is growing, and it's hired 400 folks in. Every single individual gets at least minimum wage, because we do not believe in paying any human less than that, even though it's legal practice in some parts of the world. And we make sure that there is the right support and constructs with our partners and vendors to deliver success. And let me just say that nothing brings me more joy than going in to get a coffee in our canteen here in Redmond and hearing the stories from around the world of individuals who are thriving, in their employment. It's not just about getting talent in, it's then using those insights. And we've been able to see several areas that have just blossomed from doing that. If you look at Windows 11, you'll see several aspects that are new. And these are all based on insights from our employees, from our customers. There's a brand new menu for accessibility. We want to make it easier for people to discover accessible settings. Sometimes it's not as easy as seeing a ramp. You need to be able to, well, just click a button and find exact features that you may need. And so if you go to Windows key U, or you click on the accessibility menu, you'll find everything you may need, whether you have the need for sight, low vision, hearing loss, focus, you're looking at color, any number of different features all grouped there. And I will say that there's been some features that have really had a nice boost, and there's many more to come, including color contrast, which is something that actually many of us now like to use. The dark features actually came out of designing for low vision, and we've got 4 of them now in Windows 11. We also have done things like making sure that you can auto punctuate your words, so you don't have to worry about your grammar and saying comma or full stop or period. We've made sure that Teams, everything is there for you to have an inclusive experience, with captions, transcript, raise hand, which was a feature designed with and for people with neurodiversity. We're also powering our partners. Peloton, they're an exercise company. They produce bikes, and they have video screens that if you get a bike, you join a session and you exercise with them for 20 minutes. Bear with me, I've tried it. It's not bad. But I wasn't able to be a part of that previously because it lacked captions. They actually lifted the same library that we use for Microsoft Teams, adapted it, and put it into their video sessions. Now anyone who's deaf and hard of hearing can join. We're seeing some of the same things happening with Xbox and gaming. Inclusion of specific accessible features to really power people, whether it's sign language burnt into the videos, it's captions and chat windows that again empower the deaf, and we're even getting to the point where we're now able to empower people who are blind to be able to game at the same bar of equity. And why do I mention exercise and play? Because those are important aspects of life. It's not just about the digital world, it is about the hardware world as well. And so know that we're consciously impassioned about what we can do to get more equipment out there. We did this with the Xbox Adaptive Controller, a specific controller for people with mobility. And this month, we're launching the Surface Adaptive Kit. In fact, it is in global stores now. These are stickers. Don't scoff. They're really powerful stickers. And what they do is if you can place them onto the machine, they will help you to open a device if you have mobility. They will help you to make sure that you get the right cable into the right port. They are tactile, visible, and they will also, well, you can place them on any key you want to make it quicker and easier and more productive to use your device however you see fit. These are designed for the Surface and came from, again, feedback from people with mobility. There's a lot more that I could talk about, but let me well, bring it back to the core of why I'm here. No one company can change the disability divide. No one company can impact the disability divide. We're not an island. But we are a company that can partner, work with you, work with your efforts, work with your ideas. And together we can impact the disability divide. And I really vehemently believe that. So I share all these in the hope to spur maybe a nugget, an idea, a thought, a question, I encourage you, please reach out, contact our Disability Answer Desk, which is our dedicated support environment for customers with disabilities. Find me anywhere on social media. Let us know what you think. Contact your folks in region and work with us. I believe that we can make the change. Thank you for your time, wherever you are, and thank you for driving this forward. It matters. Take care.
Thank you, Jenny, for all your insights. It always is such a pleasure and inspiration listening to you talk about accessibility and inclusion. Your passion is absolutely infectious. Thank you.
All right. I am thrilled to introduce to you our next speaker, Ms. Charlotte Maclean Nalpo, Global Disability Advisor of the World Bank. Charlotte has been focusing on working with teams across the World Bank to ensure that persons with disabilities needs are taken into consideration. With a keen focus on inclusive education, Charlotte has been an integral part of programs pertaining to accessibility in East Asia Pacific and African regions. Welcome, Charlotte. Thank you for being with us here today, and this floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Charlotte Maclean Nhlapho. I am the Global Disability Advisor at the World Bank Group, headquartered in Washington, D.C. I am a brown woman. I have long brown hair. I have green eyes. I'm wearing black rimmed glasses. Today I have on a blue sweater and I have headphones on my head. It's an absolute honor to join you for this summit. As I learned about the history of Microsoft Ability Summit and how it led to this Microsoft Asia Accessibility Summit, I knew that I wanted to be part of it. I also know Jenny, who we just heard from, and I'm a great admirer of her work, of her, and of her boundless passion and wisdom that she brings to her work. This summit brings together employees with disabilities, technical experts, engineers, and other professionals to discuss, deliberate, and work towards the creation of an inclusive society. In my work as the Global Disability Advisor at the World Bank, it is my goal to ensure that the country teams I work with across the globe are bringing all the necessary players to the table and guarantee that their voices are heard to make progress towards truly inclusive development. It's great to see that happening here. The theme of this summit is reimagining ease of living for persons with disabilities in a post-COVID era, which is not an easy task, but as we all know, a very necessary one. But with creative, passionate people like you, I'm sure this mission is one that you've already started. For 2 years now, we have been presented with one of the biggest health crises of all time. And it is not just a health crisis. It is also a crisis that has led to an education crisis, a livelihood crisis, an economic crisis, a mental health crisis, and unfortunately, a crisis that has seen an uptick in violence against women. And we know that the impacts will not end when the pandemic does. They will be with us for many years to come. For example, many of the children, especially children with disabilities, that stayed home due to the school closures at the onset of the pandemic will not return to their education. Numerous businesses, particularly small businesses, that have gone under, and with that, many working adults have lost their jobs. The bills continue to pile up, and even if they're able to secure employment again, it will take time to recover the losses incurred. People with disabilities who needed access to in-person healthcare services have often been unable to receive these due to new distancing protocols, the higher demand for the healthcare workers at the hospitals for patients with COVID-19, and simultaneously, a lower supply of healthcare providers stepped away from the field. And so many individuals infected with the virus have been left with lingering conditions that might stay with them for many, many years to come. And while there's so many terrible outcomes resulting from this pandemic, I will not dwell on them exclusively. Instead, I will examine what opportunities this awful pandemic presents to build back better, which to me, and I hope to you, means building back more inclusively. We have the chance to reimagine what real inclusive, sustainable development looks like. When we use the universal design approach in our planning, and we build accessibility in at every entry point we make during our way to better development outcomes. However, let's not stop at the question, what does inclusive development look like? While it's an important one to address, we need to go a bit further and ask, what does inclusive development feel like? When we go that step further, that's where inclusion happens. I've seen a lot of progress being made on disability inclusion at the World Bank and across the many organizations I've had the pleasure to work with and for over the last couple of years. But we can't be naive and aspire to return to where we were before COVID-19. We have had to pivot to new ways of conducting our work, of going to school, engaging in social activities, and in all of this, we've seen some really creative solutions emerge, and many of these solutions have led to greater inclusion. Ironically, many of these solutions have been around for a while. This pandemic has increased their use, which in turn has increased the demand for more and improved accessibility features, which increases the ability for somebody joining in on something that might not have been accessible to them in the past. I myself have seen the improvements made on various Microsoft platforms throughout the year, and I look forward to seeing this journey towards inclusive digital solutions only improve. In fact, some of these solutions have allowed me to participate in events I would otherwise not have been able to attend. I mean, just look at us right now. You all are joining this summit from all across Asia, and here I am joining you from my own home in Washington, D.C. And while I look forward to meeting all of you in person one day, I must say it's pretty great to be able to attend 6 different meetings taking place in 6 different locations across the globe, all in the span of 12 hours. And that's kind of what I've done today. But as we think about the promise of technology in including persons with disabilities, it's also important for us to consider the exclusion that many people with disabilities are facing as they lack affordable, accessible devices and access to the internet. There are inclusive solutions out there. We just have to make sure we are allowing everyone to reimagine alongside of us. Some of the most brilliant innovations often come from the most unexpected places. From children living in the most remote parts of their country, or persons living in slum areas. Necessity breeds innovation. So let's look far and wide for solutions and for those very innovations. Microsoft and others have the ability to scale and reach the masses and help us all be part of reimagining the world, a world that is truly inclusive. It is also imperative for us to push for more inclusive policies that ensure accessible technology is available to everyone and that accessibility standards are put in place and adhered to by all. I mentioned earlier that many children with disabilities, especially children with disabilities, who were sent home due to the school closures will not return to education. Even before COVID, more children with disabilities dropped out of school and will not return to school compared to their peers without disabilities. We have to reimagine that inclusive education system will become part of the way children learn, part of a larger ecosystem. The Inclusive Education Initiative is a multi-donor trust fund overseen by the World Bank with the purpose of accelerating action by countries and supporting their efforts in making education more inclusive of children with disabilities. One of the first things we at the World Bank did when the pandemic began was to virtually convene a group of experts on disability inclusive from around the world. I was already getting requests from some of my country level colleagues on recommended practices for disability inclusive remote learning, as children with disabilities were excluded from the initial rapid response solutions. And there was little or no data available for us to draw on from past crises, like the Ebola crisis in West Africa. So there was really nowhere we could look for guidance. So we embarked on developing an issues paper. The issues paper is called Pivoting to Inclusion, Leveraging Lessons from COVID-19 Crisis for Learners with Disabilities. In this just-in-time global public good, we addressed several themes to tackle this multifaceted challenge. These include rethinking remote learning with an inclusive lens and the use of accessible devices, preparing and supporting resilient and inclusive teachers through various platforms, disability inclusive social protection, family and community support, inclusive nutrition, WASH, and safety, and additional disability inclusive financing mechanisms. Our recommendations span across 3 critical phases: the relief phase, the recovery phase, and the resilience phase. 3 R's that I might say are very similar to Microsoft's 3R approach to digital transformation that include respond, recover, and reimagine. While we were developing this paper, we also launched a survey called Learners for Disabilities and COVID-19 School Closures. Its purpose was to understand if learners with disabilities and their families had access to supports and accessible technologies and devices they needed to continue learning during COVID-19 related school closures. We were so thrilled to garner close to 4,000 responses to the survey, which told us a lot about what these children and their families were lacking as they pivoted to remote learning. While the challenges were many, so were the solutions. They provided many of the solutions. I hope you will take time to read both the issues paper and the survey, which we will make available to you. Before I conclude, I wanted to say a word on working from home. When I say those words, many are filled with anxious thoughts, considering how they will balance their children's learning activities with their own work priorities, not being able to stop working because the computer is always there with a long list of things that you need to accomplish before the end of the day. But working from home is something that many persons with disabilities have struggled to attain from their employees in the past. This request might have been due to an inaccessible workplace, or that the transportation system was inaccessible and therefore the person was not able to get to work, which often resulted in them not getting a job. Now we know that so much of what we do at the office can be performed at home. So there is no longer an excuse, and we can employ so many of the people that were once denied these opportunities to work from wherever it's best for them as an individual. However, this is not to say that we can or should forgo making our office spaces and work environments accessible by just saying to persons with disabilities, you can simply work from home. Instead, We need to reimagine the flexibility of a hybrid work model that allows everybody to work from home while also ensuring that work environments and journeys to work are accessible and inclusive. So as we continue to reimagine what inclusive, sustainable development looks like, let us not forget to think about what inclusive, sustainable feels like and who is included. What are the things we need to keep in mind that allow persons with disabilities to feel that they're welcome to the spaces where interactions occur, the platforms where decisions are made, and all the places in between? So let's commit to reimagining them and act on making them a reality.
That was great. Thank you, Charlotte. Right. In our next session now, let's have a sneak peek at the promise and potential of emerging tech. To find out what we at Microsoft have been up to in the mystical world of AI as it applies to creating a more inclusive world, let me please invite Hector Minto. Hector is our Global Accessibility Evangelist lead. Hector, please take it away.
Hello, my name is Hector Minto. I'm the lead accessibility evangelist here at Microsoft. My role is to essentially build people's confidence to engage in the subject of accessibility and disability in technology. I'm a white male in my 40s with a bald head and a greying beard. I have a blurred background on. I'm wearing transparent framed glasses. I'm super pleased to be with you here today, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you some of the excitement we feel around the innovation that's happening in the accessibility space. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks as we go along in terms of creating an accessible experience. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Give me a moment. So here I am in my PowerPoint presentation, which we're about to go through. Before any session, what I can do is I can go into the slideshow options here, and I can choose to turn my captions on. And you can see here that I can choose to speak in English, but then also display the language in any of these languages. I'm going to keep the subtitle language on English for this session, but I'm going to make sure that I don't interfere with the captions you've already got on your recording as I turn them off. Okay, the reason I do this is because we have to increasingly get confident in the artificial intelligence that's built into our products. Look at the quality of the captions here. It's amazing when you think about what's happening here in the background. For the first few seconds of this presentation, we're essentially using raw data. But then once we get started, the AI model has read my slides, read my notes, and looked at the vocabulary within my presentation to ensure that we have an amazing inclusive experience with accurate captions. At the end of the presentation, of course, what it will do is it will delete that data. There is a no record policy on this to ensure that we maintain privacy, GDPR compliance in various territories around the world. Now I'm going to turn these off to make sure that you're concentrating on the captions you've got on your screen right now. But that's really a great example of what I'd like to talk to you about in this next 20 minutes. How do we use some of the brand new tools that are available in technology to drive even greater inclusion? But also, how do we move the narrative of accessibility and inclusion beyond the tech firms, beyond the people who are designing the OS on our laptops, on our watches, on our phones, and how do we start to empower other people building technology to just add more accessibility using some of these amazing tools? So when we think about what artificial intelligence is, it's fundamentally a new set of tools that amplify human capability. If we live in a world where computers can increasingly see, can hear speech, can recognize natural language, then we can start to enhance some of our digital experiences to empower people with disabilities, but also just empower every human to have a different way of working with technology. When we offer choice in the way that we interact with technology, we more naturally include the billion people on the planet with disabilities to have their own way of accessing technology. And this is partly what we are trying to do as Microsoft. We don't just want to do what we can do in the world of disability inclusion and accessibility, We want to empower you to do what you want to do in your world, whether you're in retail, whether you're in health, whether you're in education. How could you start to add elements of accessibility into your projects? Both the rigor of designing legally accessible experiences, but then also moving to the delight of adding cognitive services and other tools to just drive different ways of working in your tools. This is all part of our commitment within Microsoft. We recently re-announced our 5-year commitment to include affordable technology, talent development, making sure that people with disabilities are accessing the workplaces, maintaining education in the modern world that we're building, but then also to share some of the advances in workplace culture where organizations like Microsoft are recognizing the benefit of having amazing disability talent in our midst. When we think about affordable technology, though, and accessible design, we have to change our thought process a little bit to include some of these new tools. Now, I've put just a very busy slide in front of us here to show some of the features that essentially are built into modern technology, into Microsoft 365, that just routinely drive different ways of working and greater inclusion. I'll talk through a few of them. Look at image description. Whenever we put a photo or an image into an email or into a document, into a PowerPoint deck, we use computer vision, cloud cognitive services to essentially put a description behind those images. When we look at things like the Teams captions, if you're joining a Teams call, you don't need to put your hand up and ask somebody to put the captions on. You can actually just turn those captions on, show in multiple languages in your own call. Look at PowerPoint Coach. For people who are nervous about giving a presentation, they can go using AI and practice that presentation on their own, and using the speech to text and the natural language processing built into PowerPoint, they can actually get feedback on their presentation and start looking at some of the language they're using, the pace of speech, whether they're using too much hesitation. We're using AI to enhance that training tool. If I look at search in Office, Alt-Q, what we can do is we can use natural language to find the tools we need, which means that you don't need to know what a designer called a feature, you just decide what you're looking for. So if I want to look for little letters, Office will find superscript or subscript for you. We're using that natural language processing to make our product easier to use. Windows Hello uses face recognition and face detection to give people a new way of accessing their computer. So less worry about remembering long passwords, just use your face to unlock your PC. Microsoft Lens uses edge detection and then optical character recognition to allow you to scan receipts, scan documents, take pictures of this very screen in front of you in the presentation you're watching, and then save it into your OneDrive and make it searchable through the OCR that you're using, or then make it readable using the Immersive Reader built into Microsoft products. If we look at something like voice typing in Windows 11, Windows key H, it's already somewhat in Windows 10, but the optimized version is in Windows 11. You can benefit from just natural voice typing, which massively helps people who have low vision, who are blind in certain circumstances, but also people with dyslexia or a physical disability. What we're saying here is that our product teams have been looking at Azure, looking at cognitive services, looking at the cloud, and essentially modernizing our product. These features that I show you here are sometimes presented to mainstream audiences as the hero demos. Look at things like PowerPoint, the PowerPoint designer that we have, where you just put a few words and an image onto a slide, and artificial intelligence creates this beautiful, accessible experience for you. Yeah, this is incredibly exciting for people revisiting PowerPoint for the first time in a number of years. It modernizes the experience. It feels modern. It feels different. It feels like it's not your old version of the product that you used in school, and it excites people. It gets people to invest more of their time to learn more about your product. And we want this opportunity for many other organizations and businesses. But before we get there, I also want to talk for a quick moment about discoverability. Accessibility is not just about the magic and these amazing tools. It's also about us as designers and organizers sitting there and thinking, actually, we're going to put accessibility more front and center within our product. What I'm showing on screen right here now is the new accessibility toolbar in Office. Now, we've been on a journey with this. It used to be hidden where you checked a document for accessibility, and then we brought it out onto the review tab, and now it has its very own toolbar whenever you run the accessibility checker. So there's a journey of confidence that our teams have gone on, that our customers want accessibility to be given the space. We're also seeing that with Windows 11 through the new Action Center. Windows key A will get you there, and accessibility settings are what I would call front of house now in Microsoft products. This is exciting, yeah, and they're not new features, they're just essentially new ways of getting confident and saying we want this product to be accessible. Now, when we look at that, that also applies to many other parts of the Microsoft stack. Power Apps has its own accessibility checker. We have an extension for Chrome and an installation for Windows to allow you to check the rigorous accessibility using automated checking of the products that you're building. Quick proviso here, it's not just, we can't just use automated testing to ensure an accessible experience for people. But what we are showing here is that more increasingly we're pulling out these checking tools into Microsoft products to ensure that developers and product builders and marketers and website owners can very quickly see if that experience is accessible or not. So please look out for these options. This is also then feeding into some of the pre-made tools that you're finding in Azure. So if you look at Azure Sentinel, they've recently blogged about the fact that, you know, we've got enhanced zoom built into the template. Content reflows depending on the size of the experience you're using to give you a really nice visual experience. And the linear order is maintained so that people who are using screen readers or people using the tab key to navigate through an app means that they have a really good experience, a linear order through the experience. I just wanted to talk about that for a moment because that's the rigor of accessibility that is in no way going away. We must maintain rigor in accessibility and empower a wider set of stakeholders to test. Okay. But as Satya has said, and this was from Ignite this year, essentially we're looking at reinventing computing experiences in many ways, looking at diversity of user far more than what we used to look at 20 years ago. And we're looking at these new tools to essentially amplify and accelerate creation and innovation. And that's where we get excited in the accessibility space, because so many of these tools essentially augment human capability. That's where we get to talk about our cognitive services. So I'm going to run through some of these cognitive services and give you examples of where other businesses are starting to look at those to drive different ways of working or more inclusive experiences in the products they build. Firstly, vision. We've spoken about this. Look at Seeing AI, an amazing app that empowers people who are blind to navigate the world around them using face detection, color detection, instant OCR to speech to essentially create these scenarios where we use computer vision on the edge often to empower. But then also start to look at other businesses using computer vision to build brand new technologies. Companies like GE Aviation using computer vision to convert customer paper-based records into digital formats. I don't think any of us in the accessibility space can look at that as an example and not see how that becomes more accessible for a wider group of people with disabilities. People with text disabilities or people with visual disabilities. People with reading or learning disabilities will benefit from tools that use computer vision in that way, removing that manual process. Yeah. So these are things that are just inherently more accessible because we're using computer vision. Another lovely example, which is we told a story about this week, just last week, sorry, in the UK, is Evolve, a stroke rehab project using Connect in the cloud, body tracking in the cloud, to essentially democratize stroke rehabilitation, using small, tiny, standalone PCs that can be sent out to patients in the community, linking them to their human physio, but using these on-screen exercises with body tracking to inform the process. It's a fantastic example of how we use AI and the cloud to essentially change and innovate the way something has already been done. When we look at that option, imagine how a stroke patient doesn't then have to make their way to the hospital to do that. All of the inaccessibility that's in that whole getting to hospital experience goes away when we're able to do these things remotely. But the human, the physiotherapist that's monitoring on the other side, is not being removed from the process. It's a perfect example of how we modernize this experience and make it better for the patient. The next thing I want to talk to you about is speech. Now, I've already shown it built into Microsoft products through PowerPoint. But when I look at the European Parliament using real-time transcription of parliamentary debates in all 24 languages, think how parliamentarians or politicians with disabilities will be more naturally included in those experiences. Think about how people who don't have first language are always naturally included in that as well. Yeah. But obviously, this is a tool that many of us look at for disability captioning, but there are so many opportunities for other businesses to incorporate it into their experiences. Pearson putting it into education, Progressive putting it into some of their bots. This is using speech at its best. And we just recently saw Peloton put in subtitles, and here's the important point, into live classes. Yeah, they were selling bikes to people, and all of the recorded classes were having the captions put on after the event. But the cyclist, the person doing their exercise live, who couldn't listen to the instructions, was only getting part of the product. They weren't getting the full product. And so Peloton, leveraging Azure and using this live text-to-speech, building themselves an AI model for the vocabulary that's going to be used in classes, the names of the instructors, the technical parts of the equipment, adding that into the experience delivers this amazing live experience and then delivers a more equitable experience for people with disabilities. It's a fantastic example of leveraging Azure. And then, of course, we look at language. Now, language is not just about translation. Translation is amazing. The fact that I could have done this presentation today using PowerPoint Live, given you all a code to log in on, and then you could have followed along in your own preferred language, is honestly the stuff of science fiction. But what we're also starting to see in terms of language is this concept of natural language processing, building a vocabulary within your business to make your products easier to use, and democratizing so that people don't need to understand the full technical language of an organization before getting involved and using its products. Things like detecting human sentiment as well in terms of making some of the decisions for things like insurance, things like education choices. This becomes exciting, although it obviously has risk. We've got to make sure that that data is not biased, but I will talk a little about that in a moment. But this concept of using language is really important, and allowing people to access tools in their preferred way, super important. Two good examples here. Progressive and Vodafone have created these amazing chatbots that not only are fully accessible, okay, so people with screen readers, people using assistive technology are then able to use this technology the same way as anybody else, but then people are also able to use their own natural language to get to the answers they need from these bots, whether it's for your insurance or whether it's for your mobile phone contract, is absolutely fantastic. So this usability, this new way of using speech to text to interrogate a bot, using keyboard with word prediction, using your screen reader to tab to the access boxes to be able to interrogate your bot, just delivers this amazing accessible experience that I have to say reflects incredibly well on these brands. When brands deliver inclusive experience, people feel loyal to those brands. And that's something that we should never forget in the accessibility space. You know, we must not just do the accessibility, we must ensure that we're talking about the accessibility investments we make so that our customers engage with us to tell us what needs done, you know, in addition to what we're doing already, but also, you know, we've got to make sure that people trust these brands. You know, we've got to make sure that people want to buy from brands that don't just look at a standard user, but look at the diverse set of humans who want to access their systems and their products. Okay, I'm going to go to my next slide because I also want to look at some of these applied AI services, and I'm going to pull out one in particular. Things like form recognizer, video analyzer, cognitive search. Fantastic. I can think of so many opportunities to use these in the world of disability inclusion, but But I want to just put a little bit of focus on the Immersive Reader. The Immersive Reader came out of a project at Microsoft to focus on the reading abilities of all humans, including the 1 in 12 people with dyslexia in the world. We've got to ensure that in this text-first world, that we recognize that some people with disabilities need to read text in a different way. Narrower columns of text, wider spacing between the words, different color backgrounds to enhance readability, breaking words into their syllables. These are all cloud services now. We put it into Microsoft products, started in OneNote, moved through to Office, has now gone into Edge. Essentially, all of our developers are leveraging that Azure service to make our products more usable for people with reading disabilities or reading difference. But now other organizations are starting to incorporate it into their products. Look at this amazing list of education products adding that Immersive Reader in a few lines of code into their text-based learning products. But then extend your thinking beyond education to think about things like learning courses in work, to think about mortgage statements or insurance statements or medical contracts that you might be signing. Could we start to use the cloud and use AI to drive even greater accessibility of those experiences? This has flown through the education space, but I think we have further to go in terms of banking, healthcare, retail, to more naturally incorporate great accessibility and great user experience into some of these text-based experiences. If you want to try this today, just go into Edge, highlight any text, right-click, and open in Immersive Reader to give it a go. Okay. To finish, I'd like to quickly wrap up on industries doing their own thing. You know, we've looked at the accessibility of our documents at Microsoft and the documents that you all create using our products. We've had an accessibility checker there for years. But as we engage on the topic of accessibility with a wider set of stakeholders, with new businesses that maybe weren't thinking about this 10, 15 years ago, as they become increasingly digital organizations, they're also starting to look to do their thing on accessible experiences, not just in websites, but in things like advertising. WPP is responsible for 1 in 5 of the global adverts that we are all exposed to. And increasingly what they're able to do is use our cloud services, our Azure tools, in their own software to deliver more accessible and inclusive experiences. Yes, they're using some of the accessibility checking technology to make sure that there's a rigorous experience, a rigorously accessible experience for users with the content that they engage with. The websites, the PowerPoints, the social media posts are all now being checked for accessibility. But what we're also then starting to see is things like, are disabled people represented in the global adverts? And so they're using AI to essentially feed that back to creators to get them to think about the inclusive messages that they're building. So they're using computer vision to deliver some of this. One quick thing before I wrap up. The more that we leverage AI, the more we've got to make sure that it's not delivering inferior experiences or risky experiences for people with disabilities. The data that stuff is built on, the information that stuff is built on, will deliver that experience. And one great example is Seeing AI. Seeing AI is able to recognize currency around the world. So if somebody who's blind is being given dollar bills, they can check their change using their camera. But the thing that we recognize very early in that experience is that a blind user of an iPhone doesn't necessarily take the same photos of a dollar bill that I would take. Things would be out of focus, the edges would be captured, there would be other things in the images that we might move out of the way. And so they looked at the very data that was being built and made sure that it was people who were blind and people who were essentially thinking about different out of focus and on the edge images were feeding into that AI database to make that experience great. It's a simple example, but there's no point in just having the idea and leveraging the standard AI if you're not looking at the disabled person's experience in the concept and in the data set that you're building. So I just think it's a super important thing to finish on. We get excited about these tools and what we can do to drive greater inclusion. But as you think about the tools that you're going to go away and build and the data sets that you're working on, make sure that you're engaging with people with disabilities. Make sure that your cohorts of researchers are engaging with communities and really going rigorously through the process to ensure that that product that you build at the very end is beautifully accessible. 2 calls to action. First things first, we really want people to get to the baseline level of understanding about accessibility. So we have a course on MS Learn called aka.ms/accessibility fundamentals. Take about an hour of your time. Let me know on social media. My name is Hector Minto. Let me know on social media. My Twitter feed is hminto. Let me know on social media that you've taken it, and I will promise you I will retweet it. And the second one is, if you are looking at this and thinking, I've got a great idea, I would like to do something in the accessibility space using AI, please check out our global program to fund projects with Azure Credit and more, called AI for Accessibility, aka.ms/AI for Accessibility. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Always, that was a super informative session, Hector. You really are the king of demos, my friend. Thank you.
Wow. So next up is our another fascinating session. Through the pandemic, interactive games online were a source of community and togetherness for most of us, connecting one another across the globe. How do we ensure that these are accessible to all? Let us tune into Anita Mortellani's session, who's our accessibility director at Xbox, to walk us through the journey of inclusive gaming and some exciting demos. Over to you, Anita.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Mortelloni, and I'm the Director of Accessibility at Xbox here at Microsoft. My pronouns are she, her. I have long brown hair. I'm wearing a black hoodie and recording today in a very chilly Washington state. At Xbox, our goal is to empower gamers around the world to play the games they want with the people they want on the devices they want. We know that play is a fundamental human need, as is the power of connection. 2 things that gaming does well, be it trying to beat the latest Xbox game with your friends, family game night with Monopoly, lawn darts, or solitaire on your phone. There is a little bit of gaming in all of us. Here at Xbox, we aspire to create experiences that bring people together, making life more fun for billions of people around the world by creating gaming experiences that everyone can enjoy, because when everyone can play, we all win. With over 400 million gamers with disabilities, it is important to create a community where everyone feels welcome and we can all see ourselves as a hero. This starts by putting our players and creators at the center of everything we do, bringing accessibility into every aspect of development, from ideation, design, research, testing, and then post-launch, monitoring feedback from the community. This is the exact approach we used with a recent launch of the accessibility feature tags in the Xbox stores, a capability that tags game titles with accessibility features that a game has, making it easier to find games you can play based on the features you need. Let me rewind a bit and share that story. Imagine you are eagerly anticipating a new game, or if you're not a gamer, a new movie or show, and you purchase it to find out it isn't compatible with your device at home. This is the same frustration gamers with disabilities have after purchasing a game, only to find minutes in they can't play it, or get almost through the entire experience just to find themselves hitting a new mechanic that presents an unexpected, unintentional, and unavoidable barrier to completion, meaning they can't finish that game. So it should be no surprise, one of the most common questions we have gotten over the past 15 years from players with disabilities is, what games can I play? While Game Pass has been a huge help allowing gamers with disabilities to try a wide variety of games without the large financial commitment, we know we can do more to help our community. Which is why this past month, we announced new store functionality aimed at addressing this issue. Thanks to the efforts of a myriad of teams across Xbox, the over 80,000 members of our Xbox Accessibility Insider League, a group of individuals self-identifying as having a disability or an ally to the community, You can now determine whether a game has one or more of 20 common accessibility features, as determined by extensive community feedback and research. This functionality is called accessibility feature tags. Let me briefly take you through what that experience looks like. Starting at the Microsoft Store, on a new accessibility spotlight page, players can find products that have been tagged by developers having a variety of capabilities. These criteria are validated by game reliability engineering teams against a set of specific criteria that aims to ensure games meet an aspirational quality bar and provide a consistent experience for our community, but also tangible accessibility goals that align to our Xbox accessibility guidelines. So how does this work? When you go up to the Microsoft Store on Xbox and Xbox.com, you can navigate to an accessibility spotlight page. In this case, we're going to check out Sea of Thieves. On a game's product details page in the Microsoft Store on Xbox and Xbox.com, a player can see many accessibility features a game has. In this case, Sea of Thieves has 7 accessibility features. Going on to the details page of Sea of Thieves, the features are grouped into 4 categories: gameplay, audio, visual, and input. In the case of Sea of Thieves, there is 1 feature for gameplay, 2 for audio, 1 for visual, and 4 input features. Definitions for each of these features are linked to from the same location, explaining the function means and how it is intended to help gamers with disabilities. Selecting a category, let's say input, we move to a detailed page that shows the relevant individual tags by name. In this case, input has 4 options: full keyboard support, no button holds, single stick gameplay, and then text-to-speech, speech-to-text communication. Also available is the ability for developers to provide a URL for a title-specific web page dedicated to accessibility information. This can include additional details on the tags shown in the store, as well as other features and functionality we currently don't have tags for. In this example, a player has clicked on Additional Accessibility Information button on the details page of Sea of Thieves, and they are taken to Edge on the console, where a robust accessibility documentation is explained. But at the beginning, I mentioned how we put players at the center of everything we do. How did that happen in this project? From the very beginning, the team partnered with the community in addition to extensive user research to identify not only what accessibility features are important, but the criteria behind those tags. You see, it's not enough to have subtitles in a game. If they're well below the 26 pixel at 1080, or worse, white text on a white snowy scene at a reduced speed while playing offline, customizable subtitles, as well as colorblind settings. So, what is next? As we look forward to the future of game accessibility, we acknowledge that this is very much a journey to ensure that everyone can play, enjoy the challenges and the connections with games, and be part of the community. That is why we continue to invest in resources that make it easier for our game creators to understand and include accessibility into their products. This started with the Xbox Accessibility Guidelines, the ZAGs, in 2019, a set of best practices for designers and developers. And now the Gaming and Accessibility Fundamentals course on MS Learn, a free external course that covers topics like community collaboration, gaming assistive technologies, and best practices for games, platforms, and hardware. Ultimately, a way to prove out your gaming accessibility knowledge. As we close out, the question we often get is, what is next for Xbox accessibility? Well, at Xbox, we continue to strive to make gaming fun for the billions of people around the world and that want to play and create. This means continuing to identify barriers to play, making it easier for developers with disabilities to create, and partnering with the gaming and disability community to make games they can play and see themselves in. Our goal is to empower everyone to play in a way that is right for them, because when everyone can play, we all win.
That was really cool. Thank you, Anita. Absolutely love it. In this next session now, let's hear from Zubin, Priyanka, and team on some of the key accessibility and inclusion initiatives, internal and external, we're running across Asia to empower people to skill up, prepare, and thrive in a tech career. Please take it away, Zubin, Priyanka, and team.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and a warm welcome to the session on skilling and preparing for a career in tech. I'm Zubin Setna and I'm a brown Asian Indian man with short black hair, and I'm wearing a gray and green check shirt today. I'm in my home office with a blue background, and today I'll be talking about what has been our journey around accessibility and inclusive hiring. I am part of the global talent acquisition team, and in my role as a university recruiting member, it's been our effort, a conscious effort on ensuring that we have our outreach, our engagement with talent pool, which is on the lookout to realize their dream and their passion with Microsoft. We have had our experiences, our learnings, and that's what we're trying to share with all of you today. So today we are joined with our business partners, our colleagues from different teams, and they will kind of give you an overview on what has been some of our journey that we have had in the last couple of years. So sit back and hope what we share will be insightful and will bring in a lot of thoughts for us to look at what can be done more in the future as an organization and for others as well. And with that, let me invite my colleague Priyanka Bhagi to introduce and then bring in our next speaker today. Over to you, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, Zubin. Hi, I am Priyanka Bhagi. I am a brown Indian Asian woman with long wavy black hair. Today, I'm wearing a dark blue shirt and my background is a light blue background. I'm a university recruiter for the Asia Pacific region and Australia, New Zealand at Microsoft. I help universities and students grow a successful partnership with Microsoft and understand our student engagements prior to and during the hiring seasons. I've been with Microsoft for over 4 years and been in the industry for approximately 7 years now. As a team, we have been consciously driving the efforts of making our hiring process inclusive and ensuring an equal opportunity for all. We have been successful in hiring accessibility interns and build an inclusive internship program for our region. The hiring process and the internship program involves skilling the pool of candidates for our interviews, land them with an internship with Microsoft, and eventually get a job, a full-time opportunity at Microsoft. In this journey, candidates are given access to the tools that they are familiar with and can help them interview, plus build skills comfortably. With this, I would like to hand it over to Kiran Bangalore, who would be speaking to you about the accessibility and inclusive hiring efforts at Microsoft.
Thank you, Priyanka, and welcome all of you to this session. Hi, I'm Kiran Bangalore. I'm a brown Indian Asian man. I have short black hair, and today I'm wearing a blue shirt and I wear rimless glasses. I'm joining you today from my home office. I'm a group program manager in the Azure Cloud division at Microsoft. I work to enable all partners and sellers of Microsoft first to onboard and grow a successful partnership with Microsoft, and then further on partner with both sellers and partners to grow a successful business, both for Microsoft and our partners. I co-chair the Disability ERG at IDC, the India Development Center, and also member of the India Development Center D&I Council. I've been a part of Microsoft for about 13 years now, and part of the industry for about 20. I grew up with one of my first cousins who was born without a limb, and his struggles to make it and finally win a medal at the Olympics was so inspiring for me. And I always wanted to do more and help. And when I got to Microsoft, I found several avenues in which I could do the same. At Microsoft, we believe that hiring people with disabilities is an integral need for us to increase the diversity of our workforce and the potential for us to tap into this rich talent that will help us grow our products to make it even better. We realized that over the years that this hiring needs to be a conscious effort for us to achieve our goals here. So we start very early with several programs that we drive. Either we drive, Microsoft drives, or we work with industry. For example, we are an active participant in an industry program we call Together We Can, where we collaborate actively with several companies in the industry to ensure that we're skilling people as they're getting through their college to get them ready for interviews at places like Microsoft and other companies. I work closely with an NGO that's called iSTEM, where we've created a mentorship program for college students that we've mentored closely that are mentored closely by our employees, who are able to connect on several topics that lead them finally to hiring some of these candidates eventually into Microsoft. At Microsoft, we ensure that all our interviewers have gone through training on being able to interview people with disabilities and provide them with the tools that they need to interview successfully, especially in this COVID remote interviewing scenarios. We ensure that any potential unconscious bias or prejudice is addressed in this training so that it doesn't come into effect when the interview process itself kicks in. All the candidates are actually given access to any tools that they are familiar with or which can help them actually interview as normal. Aside from the mental, emotional, and psychological challenges to a person with disability, there remains to this day, this physical limitation that often hinder them from completely functioning as normal. And these environmental and structural issues that artificially limit them from maximizing their potential. At Microsoft, we employ what we call a reasonable accommodation policy, which essentially means that we've ensured that our facilities are certified to be a person with disability accessible, with wheelchair ramps. We have modern restrooms, special chairs, tables, and each person with disability hire that we do are taken care of by our onboarding team with their unique needs. So we engage with them early during the process, ensure that if they need something special, we have it set up before they come join us. At Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. We expect each of us, no matter what level we are or role or function, to play an active role in creating this environment where people of a diverse range of backgrounds are excited to bring what they have and who they are and do their best to work with us. And with this partnership with colleges and universities, we hope to create this environment to attract more and more talent from different backgrounds and onboard them, many more interns and full-time candidates onto Microsoft. Thank you for listening in. Over to Zubin.
Thank you so much, Kiran, for sharing your insights, the learnings that we have had with our various partnerships and the internal participation from the various business stakeholders. With that, let me invite Pratima Amunkar, one of our business leaders who has been a strong advocate of having diverse and inclusive work teams. And as a leader herself, she has had quite a few interns on her teams over the years. Pratima, we would like to hear from you on your journey and what is it in store for us for the future as well. Over to you, Pratima.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zubin. And thanks a lot to Kiran for sharing very, very interesting and inspiring words. To introduce myself, I'm Pratima Amunkar. I'm an Indian woman. I have short curly black hair and I'm wearing long shiny silver earrings, a black top with small butterflies, white butterflies printed on it. I lead the strategy for cloud and artificial intelligence plans for Apac. I also chair the accessibility pillar for our diversity, inclusion, and allyship group here. As you've heard from Kiran, and you'll keep hearing from all of us that you meet, we have a clear mission. That is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And we're able to say this with so much passion because these are not just, mere words to us. It's really a part of our core DNA. It's a basic of how we work with our customers, with our partners, with our stakeholders, internally how we show up on a day-to-day basis with our people and our teams. And the reason why is because there are billions of people in this world who want to achieve more, but have a different set of circumstances, different sets of abilities, different backgrounds that often lock us out of, participating in the world that is happening around them. So we strongly believe that our mission will be fulfilled only when everyone is included. And the most important step that we have taken in this regard is to manage accessibility like a business with a systematic way to measure progress, measure targets. And one of the key dimensions of this method is our people and culture. It is with that mindset that 2 years ago, we at Apac decided to just get together and take deliberate steps to hire interns from pools of talent that included students from nonprofit organizations, as well as institutes for people with disabilities. So this was an effort led by our amazing Microsoft University recruitment team, as well as our HR and business leaders. So across the past 2 years, this core team, all of us have partnered with NPOs, which are dedicated to disability inclusive hiring. And we work closely with them to run what we call as first step career clinics. So this, along with universities, we work on talking to young tech PWD talent. So we run these regular career clinics in collaboration with the NPOs. So for example, this year, this workshop was completely online, as you can imagine. And what we covered in these workshops are an overview about Microsoft, opportunities that one can get in tech. How do you prepare for those opportunities? What is an internship like? What is the experience of an internship? We also run this with breakout sessions, which are supported by volunteers from our own tech teams and our own engineering teams inside of Microsoft, which help people get a complete view and a one-on-one view on career advice and so on. So now about the internships itself. We work closely with potential intern hiring managers. And the team conducts sessions on disability inclusive hiring, resources available, tips on team preparation, inclusivity by job roles. We also review the need for any tech or any tools that are required for the host team as well as the interns, including on how to use Teams, for example. We run training programs on that. This year, the internships were completely online, so we needed to look at it a little differently, work differently to look at how interns are well supported with regular check-ins, with connects, with preparation sessions for the managers and the teams. We also looked at how we could assign a buddy for the intern with the core accessibility V team. And the key step that we took, I think, which was fairly useful and helped us, was setting up with external mentors, professionals who are already gone through the journey, the first few steps, and setting it up with those external mentors, mentor-richer experience for the intern itself. And you heard about the employee resource groups from Kiran. That was another extremely important step that we did, where we connected our interns to the employee resource groups internally, as well as global communities, to provide both tech as well as non-tech support. So all in all, the key thing that I think we decided that we will do and we continue to plan to do in the future is to make all the interns part of the entire annual regular intern hiring cycle so that it becomes a richer experience for everybody. Interns are set measurable business goals. Plus, importantly, personal goals, like, for example, availing of training resources, clearing certification exams, which are fully funded by their host team. Interns are encouraged to volunteer for stretch projects. So, for example, one of the interns on my team volunteered and was part of a V team, which organized a hackathon for women in STEM. So, things like other additional skills like working in V teams, cross-group collaboration, being part of a larger group, which is, doing other goals. All these things were learned along the way, were part of the experience. So what I'm really happy about also is that many of the interns have successfully cleared Microsoft certification exams, which helps in the future also. So I would say that delivering measurable business results, building a pipeline for future talent for Microsoft, our customers and partners are the key takeaways from this internship experience. And in the future, we plan to continue to develop this program in collaboration with our nonprofit partners across all of APAC. So thank you for sharing, and I hope this has given you some insight. Back to you, Priyanka.
Thank you so much, Pratima, for sharing the entire journey of the interns that we've gone through in the last couple of years now. Talking about journey, I would like to invite Kenny Singh. Kenny, could I request you to speak more about the journey of the Microsoft inclusion culture and how is it a part of our culture in our day-to-day life as well?
Thank you, Priyanka. It is just such a pleasure to be here today, to be having this conversation with all of you. So my name is Kenny Singh. I'm a brown Indian man. I have short black hair. I'm coming to you from my office here in Melbourne, Australia today. I'm wearing a black jumper and my pronouns are he and him. So I've been at Microsoft for about 10 years in various roles, spanning professional services, partner, our business group, customer success, so a whole raft of different roles. 22 years ago, I was diagnosed with an eye condition. It was a retinal degenerative eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa. So in my 10 years at Microsoft, I've actually used a screen reader, I've used a magnifier, so a whole raft of assistive technology to access information and to be able to do what I really, really wanted to do, which was basically a career in computers. So if we think about inclusion, and if we actually think about an inclusive culture at Microsoft, we think about three specific components. We think about diversity, we think about equity, and we think about inclusion. Diversity, it's the diversity of perspectives, it's the diversity of backgrounds, it's the diversity of different needs, different cognitive needs. When we think about equity, it's about bringing all those diverse backgrounds, perspectives, requirements together and giving them equitable access to the work environment, to what we actually do at Microsoft. And then inclusion is all about ensuring that everyone with different kinds of backgrounds actually feels included in the process. So how have we actually set about doing that? One of the first components of that is to actually create a safe psychological space. A safe psychological space that ensures that people don't have to cover, people don't have to hide the different cognitive needs. So there's no stigma attached to people actually having different kinds of needs, different kinds of cognitive needs. So we put a lot of effort into ensuring that psychological safety. We actually have allyship programs. We have our employee resource group. I have the absolute privilege to be the co-chair for our disability employee resource group for Australia and New Zealand. We actually have a lot of industry partnerships that we've created in my part of the world, in Australia and New Zealand, with various organizations to ensure that not only are we creating a psychological space at Microsoft, but we're also sharing our learnings and the lessons learned with the rest of the ecosystem, our partners, our customers, the whole industry. If you then think about what are some of the mechanistic things at a process level, at a people level that need to be done to really create an inclusive culture, I'll give you a few examples of some of the things that we've actually learned along the way, in my 10 years at Microsoft. So we have a special assistance fund at Microsoft. If someone needs assistive technology, someone like me who actually uses a screen reader and a magnifier, you actually have a special assistance fund, a centrally managed special assistance fund, which you can basically buy the assistive technology from to be productive, to add value in the context that you actually want to add value in. And that specific cost does not come out of your division's funding or your team's funding, which basically means that it's completely transparent from a systemic perspective, right? So that actually creates a lot of equity. So people actually don't even have to, let's say, seek specific authorization from their supervisor to buy that assistive technology. As long as it's required, there's a mature, independent process to basically make that happen. Then if you think about some of the other components of an inclusive culture, we actually have a lot of attention paid to the inclusion at events. So irrespective of what Microsoft event it is, whether it's a customer event, whether it's a partner event, whether it's an industry event, in the registration process itself, we actually have the mechanism for people to request special assistance, whether that's wheelchair-based assistance or sighted assistance or hearing assistance, whatever the need be, we actually have a special mechanism. We have a mechanism for people to request that need be addressed in the context of that event. Then we also have a lot of attention paid to the accessibility of our tools, of our user interfaces, from Azure, as Kiran was referring to before, to Microsoft 365, to Dynamics, to the breadth of technology, including Xbox, and a whole raft of technology that comes out of Microsoft globally. We pay a lot of attention to ensuring that we always have a certain accessibility benchmark met in all our tools, in all our services, in all our products, whether they're on premises or they're actually in the cloud. And then finally, we actually have, and this just absolutely cannot be understated, right? We actually have the support mechanisms, whether we're actually talking about mental health, whether we're actually talking about, people needing support, in a situation where they're actually dealing with something which is a significant, issue as perceived by them. We actually have the mechanisms. And last but not the least, we actually have at a people level, we have the processes built into the system. So for example, we actually have enablement kits for our managers. So these are enablement kits which basically ensure that our managers actually have all the tools, our leaders have all the tools to actually support their teams who have different cognitive needs. Why do we do all of this stuff that we've actually been talking to you about? It comes back to the mission that Pratima and Kiran and Priyanka stated earlier. So our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. To do that, we don't just need immaculate execution. We actually need a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. We want every single person in the Microsoft family to actually feel a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, with the overall mission of the organization. We believe that with immaculate execution and a sense of meaning and purpose, we actually have the foundation for a growth mindset and to accelerate innovation, which is absolutely necessary for us to reach the mission that we actually set out to achieve as Microsoft. Thank you so much, Zubin. I'll actually hand it back to you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kenny, for that overview and also sharing about the support mechanism that we have within the organization. So thank you for sharing that, Kenny. And thank you, Pratima and Kiran, for joining us today and sharing from your experiences on the journey that we have taken in being diverse and inclusive. As we wrap it up, we just wanted to thank all the participants that we have had on the call today. Thank you for your time and for listening to us. Hope what we have shared has been insightful. And we really hope that what we have tried out, what we are doing at Microsoft may help you, not just within Microsoft, but elsewhere as well. And we look forward to meeting all of you in our next sessions as well. Thank you for joining today. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Zubin and Priyanka. It was a pleasure listening to you both. Technology presents a plethora of solutions for inclusion of persons with disabilities, vis-a-vis opportunities, and skill development. Microsoft has been proud to have worked on these solutions backed by state-of-art technology with our customers and partners.
Absolutely. In this next session now, let's hear a customer story that shows Microsoft Accessibility products and services in action, helping create a more inclusive hybrid workplace.
In the future, digital transformation will continue to progress and many companies will see changes in their business models. I believe that Singapore is benchmark country to find the answer to what kind of people and skills are needed for the future that companies are aiming for in this digital era. We hope to understand the skills of the talent that will survive in the future and make employment more inclusive. So, Tomwork is here in Singapore to empower PWDs to create a new PWD employment model in a digital job. We want to thank Temasek Polytechnic for their willingness, openness, and commitment to making the program happen.
And as Singapore moves towards being an inclusive society, it is important to promote inclusion in the workplace. PAP provides a unique platform for employers and stakeholders to interact and work with our graduates with special needs.
Let's put our hands together to celebrate this momentous occasion of the partnership and the launch of the PAP. We will now take a photograph to capture this important occasion.
Heartiest congratulations to all participants who have completed the Talent Accelerator program. I hope you have enjoyed your learning in the past 11 weeks, and I wish you all the best as you enter the workforce and apply the lessons you have learned. I'm grateful to the partners Sumitomo Life Insurance, Temasek Polytechnic, and Hide and Seek for coming together to put together this program. And I hope that more in our society, multinational corporates, local businesses, as well as social enterprises can come together to co-create these programs which will have a positive impact on our society.
That was thrilling. I am truly fascinated by the experience and power of our inclusive technology and its value in making workplaces, education, and daily lives more accessible. Let us hear more from our Australia and New Zealand leadership in Mark, Stephen, and Vanessa as they talk about technology empowering persons with disabilities in ease of living and working in a hybrid world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ANZ segment of the Asia Accessibility Summit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mark Lee. I'm the Public Sector Lead for ANZ and very proud to be the Accessibility Virtual Team Lead for ANZ as well. This is a journey that I started about 5 years ago, getting involved with a group of really passionate people in Microsoft ANZ that want to have an impact in the accessibility space. We've tackled things from inclusive hiring to accessibility of our physical premises to content accessibility, inclusive culture, self-identification of our staff, customer advocacy, and of course, partner advocacy across our 16,000 partners in ANZ. We've made some progress, but of course, much more to do.
It's fantastic to be here today at the summit. It's a wonderful event. And there's so much for us to share, equally for us to learn as we continue on our journey to provide the most inclusive environment that we can here at Microsoft. But in terms of the things we've done locally, Mark, one of the programs that immediately comes to mind is the Real Mates program, which is a program that helps to train volunteers in our business to become mental health advocates so that they can be a mate for anyone across the organisation who might need to have a conversation at any point in time about any aspect of their professional or personal life. And that program has been a massive success with a lot more to do, of course. We've obviously leveraged the global programs we have around the pandemic leave that we made available to our teams, as well as the wellbeing days that have been particularly well received because they've acknowledged the intense pressure that so many people have felt through this time and the ability to simply say, look, I need a day to address some challenges that I have at home with the kids or with my mum and dad or friends or in the community. And so that's been well received as well. Finally, Mark, I think the employee resource groups that we have brought together across Microsoft, and in fact, we're very proud here in ANZ that we have more employee resource groups here than in any other country other than the US. And recently we kicked off our families at Microsoft ERG and also our Asians at Microsoft ERG. And in both cases, we've had clinical psychologists join some of those calls to help address any concerns or questions that the team might have come up. Because ultimately, I think what it's been about is just creating a safe environment for people to raise the issues that they're experiencing so that we can all acknowledge how difficult things are. And then, of course, we can help each other.
Thanks, Steve. And of course, being a technology company and thinking about the impact that technology can have in this space, any thoughts there?
Oh, look, for sure. We've learned so much as an organisation through this time. We've seen so many people obviously move to a digital way of working, and Teams has been a platform that's helped so many organisations, the public sector, the private sector, organisations large and small, continue to operate. And we've learned a lot about what it means to create a digital experience for employees. And we've made recent announcements about the Viva platform that I think you will continue to see investment in, that will acknowledge the need for us to balance the well-being of employees as they engage more often in a digital environment. For example, that might include putting in place a digital commute, just a reminder in your diary each day, if you are working remotely, to make sure you prioritize a little bit of a break at the beginning or the end of the day, or for that matter, during the middle of the day, to break up the calls that seem to fill up everyone's diary. But of course, all of that work, Mark, around Viva is in parallel to a lot of the work we've been doing over many years to make our platforms as accessible as possible. And, you know, Immersive Reader is one example, I think, is a great piece of technology that goes to the heart of how do we make technology a tool that works for all of us, whether it's in schools where, you know, kids can use that capability, or of course those that might have some form of vision impairment. And so much more, I think, for us to continue to work on, Mark, as we make our platforms the most inclusive and accessible that they can be.
Great point, Steve. And having worked with you closely, I know this is an area you're very passionate about and in fact represent us externally. Can you just talk a little bit about how we're elevating the conversation through industry partnerships and some of the conversations you've had with other organizations?
Yeah, this is really important because I think as we talk about the topic, it's always true that it's people first and technology second. That is, technology is a tool. And I've talked about some of the ways in which we're hoping to continue to build our tools so that they're more accessible and more inclusive. But of course, it's people first. And we also know that there's so much we can learn from each other, because just as we are on our own journey, Mark, here at Microsoft to make the most inclusive environment, we know that many others are on their own journey, and we can learn so much from them, just as we hope we might be able to share some of our learnings with others. That's why in 2020 we were very proud to help bring together a group of other like-minded organisations here in Australia to form the Corporate Mental Health Alliance of Australia, which is a collective of large employees. We represent about 450,000 working Australians to share what's going on in our organisations and the well-being techniques that we are implementing that are working in any organisation that might be transferable to another. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, Mark, is that we are all in this together. And it's by working together that we can find the best way through the challenges that we're experiencing. And the Corporate Mental Health Alliance has been a wonderful forum for us to do just that, to help each other. And we're looking forward to extending the Corporate Mental Health Alliance into New Zealand next year under Vanessa's leadership, which will be really, really exciting.
Wonderful. Thanks, Steve, and we appreciate you representing us in that very important forum. Over to Vanessa. Vanessa, first of all, been fantastic working with you over the past 6 months, and I've certainly learnt a lot about inclusion from you through the great work that you've been doing in New Zealand. Thinking about your vision for digital equality and an inclusive hybrid workplace, what are your thoughts in that space, and what are you doing in New Zealand to move that forward?
Well, thanks, Mark, and something so near and dear to my heart, to be honest, and if ever there's been a time, the last 18 months has been around either seeing the divide get greater and actually proving we can all work from anywhere. And, work's the place you go, and it's still extremely important, but our tools and everything that we do enables us to do a fantastic work leveraging our tool set. But what I love most, actually, if I look at Microsoft as a corporation, is just the way we do inclusive design. The whole catchphrase that if you design for one, but enable many, that's what's so incredible. And I've just been in awe of watching, our gaming ads with anybody with accessibility needs can play with anybody. And I see that in New Zealand as well. A lot of our communities, which we do feel is getting left behind, are now getting more upskilled and reskilled and thinking, you know what, I could actually stay with my whānau. I could actually live in the area that I grew up in, and I could now, in fact, move into a technical career. And something we've just launched is 10K Wahine, which is our 10,000 female initiative, to train and enable more and more to consider that actually have the confidence, learn something new, leverage these incredible tools, and move into a role. I know even talking to my own elderly parents, oh, I don't know much about tech. And I'm like, you've actually got a smartphone, you're a digital native. So just seeing so much goodness in terms of, the pandemic and what's coming about, the way we design for one that enables for all. And yes, some incredible initiatives. I could talk for hours on each and every one of them.
Yeah, we've certainly experienced it ourselves, haven't we, as a leadership team across ANZ, and having to collaborate. And in fact, we've never met each other face to face, but we've had to ensure that our teams have inclusive and accessible meetings all the time. And as we think about our customers and partners that may be watching, any guidance to them on how they can be thinking about using technology in the inclusive hybrid work journey?
Well, I'm going to quote Satya Nadella. We saw more technical innovation and can-do in 2 weeks than we might have seen in 2 years. And for me, Mark, there's nothing like getting together. Let's face it, we are human beings, but we've proven we can do conferences, we can do transformational projects. And actually, again, it's so inclusive because everybody's on the screen. Sometimes we're in those meetings and everyone's in a boardroom and you're the one or two people that are working remotely. and sometimes don't feel that inclusive. And I know, Stephen, you're good at this. Okay, everyone, cameras on, so everybody feels like that face to face. But I think my advice is just keep going. You know, we had no choice, so we did. And I think with sometimes, you know, seeing how fast some organizations and partners have pivoted and leveraged tech, don't go back to how things were. You know, I truly think that this is the year of movement and empowerment like ever before, and giving those opportunities to some that you may not have otherwise hired or brought into your organization, because actually they want to be safe in their work environment. And that's what I love about our tools. They do work. It is tiring, I will admit, going back to what Stephen said about well-being, booking in those, you know, those walks and things like that, because I know for me personally, I found my days started earlier and finished later. So you do have to put those guardrails around yourself. Otherwise, the last thing you want is burnout through having to work hybridly like we all are.
Absolutely. Great advice, Vanessa. Then thinking, Steve, about the culture and how important that is as part of the equation here. And I know in customer meetings and partner meetings, we get asked a lot about the cultural journey at Microsoft. Maybe, Steve, could you share how we've been thinking about creating a culture at Microsoft that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive broadly across ANZ?
You bet. I think it starts, Mark, again with something that Satya has shared very directly about the need for us to listen, to learn, and then to act, because the starting point for an inclusive environment is one where there's a base level of understanding of the different communities in which you're looking to connect with and participate in, and to provide that environment to. And I think starting from the acknowledgement that none of us know all that we need to know about the different diverse groups that we might want to engage with. And there are many diverse groups in our community, not just from an employment point of view, but we aspire to connect with and represent our community. So how do you do that? And I think it starts with this idea of listening and learning. And for us, Mark, as you know, we've worked very hard to connect with those in the community who can help us to go on that journey. And that's connected us with a few coalitions and alliances. I mentioned the Corporate Mental Health Alliance before. We've learned so much from talking to others about their challenges and their learnings. But it's also why we connected with the Champions of Change here in Australia, which is an organisation that's been set up to address sexual harassment and bullying in the workplace, because we know that's a system level issue that requires action from all of us. And our former Sex Commissioner, Liz Broderick, has been a wonderful guide to us to help us learn more about the challenges and how we might, as an employer and as a collective, because we're working with our partners here, to show up to stamp out sexual harassment and bullying in the workplace. It's also why we've joined Includability, which is an alliance that's been formed here in Australia, led by the Human Rights Commission, with a number of leading employers to come together to talk about what role employers have to create more employment opportunities for those in our community who might have a short or long-term disability. And we know, from a global point of view, there's 1 billion people on the planet that have some form of short or long-term disability. And so this is a massive area for us to continue to learn and understand how we might play our role. In addition, as we go further down that track, we've partnered with Cornell University to create an education program for all Microsoft employees, for us all to understand how we can play a role, every single one of us, ordinary people inside our organisation, creating a wave, we hope, of extraordinary change, where we use the tools that Microsoft provides to create more accessible experiences, but we do so in an environment where each of us understand how we can do that in the most effective way. The role that you play, Mark, Vanessa, myself, all of us, to ensure that meetings are conducted in an inclusive way, and that we use our technology appropriately, that we're aware of the implications and the connotations of particular aspects of the work we do and the role that we play in our community. And that sounds really easy to say, but it's hard work. And that's why I think perhaps the most important thing, Mark, as we address that question and think about the future, is the acknowledgement that we're continuing to invest, to learn and to grow. We're taking action in many areas, But we are so interested and excited about working with others because, again, this is not a one company issue. This is not any particular sector of the economy. This is about all of us. You know, what sort of society do we want to create? And again, each of us can play a role in creating extraordinary change when we come together with that sense of wanting to learn and to grow and to be better together.
So well said, Steve. I might ask one last question of Vanessa, which, and I think you touched on this earlier actually, but what's one step that our listeners can take today to continue to help create that foundation for an inclusive culture?
You know, the one word that comes to mind is storytelling. I think we've got to really open up and, you know, certainly stand up what we've recently done. You know, we're so early on our journey. And I was really fortunate to get to know an organisation in New Zealand called B Lab, and they're incredible. They are fundamentally helping those who could get roles seek employment. But also they work with our corp team on doing a lot of product testing for us. But actually, I've just been so educated by them, like them inviting me in, understanding more around the way sometimes we write our ads. How inclusive are they? So I think, you know, for me, have a plan, but don't boil the ocean. What are the 3 things you're going to do differently? Like, what are you going to commit to as a leader and follow through on those? And for us, it starts with those ads. It starts with our training. I love our accessibility training that we have offered to us in the workplace. I've done a lot of it. And just really educate yourself because, man, I think we're missing out on some pretty incredible talent out there because the way we've sort of been going about some of these things.
Just fantastic. Thank you. It's a great response and a privilege to spend this time with both of you today. So thank you so much. And I must say, a privilege to work for a company like Microsoft who is just so passionate about this space. So many people want to help and have an impact. And also, you know, it feels like we're in a position to really make some positive change here. So thank you both for helping us lead that change. And thank you to everyone who's listening in today. We hope you've enjoyed this session, and we hope you enjoy the customer and partner stories lined up for the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve and Vanessa.
Thank you, Mark, Stephen, and Vanessa. It really is such a pleasure and inspiration to hear you speak. That brings us to the end of this inaugural episode of the Asian Accessibility Summit. We hope the sessions today both intrigued and inspired you to reimagine how we can use the power of technology to create a more inclusive world. Over the next few months, we will have many more episodes of the Asian Accessibility Summit coming your way with exhilarating customer and partner stories from across Asia, including Australia, New Zealand, India, Japan, China, and a number of other countries across our diverse and vibrant region. You will hear from government, academia, and industry. Thank you so much for tuning in and giving us the opportunity to have this important dialogue with you. Please stay well and safe. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode of our Asian Accessibility Summit. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and stay tuned as we share our calendars for the next episode of Microsoft Asia Accessibility Summit. Thank you, everyone, our speakers, our viewers who are here with us today, and special thanks to our inspirational leaders, sponsors, and the core team who has been behind the scenes at Microsoft, working tirelessly to ensure the success of this event. I would also like to thank our knowledge partners, Chase India, and our event partners, Wizcraft International, for supporting us through this whole exercise. Thank you once again for tuning in today. Wish you the very best of health, and we will be seeing you very, very soon. Thank you.